The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Tonight's episode is Awkward Awakening.
Good evening, everyone. Wade Franson here, Created in the Image of God. We are on episode 200, a round number 200. And we have a very special guest for you tonight. Been looking forward to this discussion. He has a new book out called Awkward Awakening, which just over the last few days has been climbing close to becoming a #1 bestseller on Amazon in the Kindle version. I think the hardback or paperback was out a little bit before that, but that's just one of several books that Scott Guerin has written. He's also the author of a series titled The Acclaimed Spirit Lives, Spirit Lives. It's an acclaimed series called Spirit Lives. And Scott is very well educated in a number of fields. He's done pioneering work on spirituality, health, and consciousness. He has decades of experience in both academic research and healthcare leadership. And his new book, Awkward Awakening, addresses one of the bigger questions in life. Without any further ado, I'm just going to invite Scott into the studio and we will get rolling.
Hi,
and
Wade.
There he is. So, Scott, how does it feel to have your new book out there and have it doing so well?
Well, it's great. I mean, I've been telling people I was given this message about a little over a year ago, and the message is the book. And I was pretty much guided as to what to do, say, and it was a learning journey for me. So I'm glad the message is resonating.
Well, we're glad to be a part of it and glad to have you on the show at this timely moment. But what we want to do is actually go back and talk about your creation story to start with. What were the circumstances of your origin? Who were your parents? Where were you planted on this verdant blue-green jewel floating through space? And what were the forces that shaped you in those early years? Just to get to know the real you a little bit.
Yeah, well, I was glad you just said my parents. Like, I don't know how far back you wanted to go.
No, I'd be happy to go further back than that too.
That's fine.
If there's something interesting to share.
No, basically, people say, where'd you get your interest in spirituality? Was there some incident? And my answer is always, I came in hot. I came hot to this planet. As a young child, I was just. I was being a kid, obviously doing that stuff, we were kind of forced to go to church. Like little kids didn't want to go, but we went to a Lutheran church. And the only thing that really caught my ear was the sermons. And my mother is the researcher part of me. She was the one people would say Flo was the woman of 1,000 questions. And my father is the spark in his eye. The excitement, the risk-taking part of me. And so the two of them kind of helped me, kind of catapult or drive my passion, and to follow it. I mean, it's the only thing in life I've really wanted to do is to seek, spiritual connection and kind of understand the whole thing. So, I went through the Lutheran church, and then we all left and went to a conservative Christian church or genre for a number of years. And then I left that to into the Presbyterian and Baptist. I tried different Protestant denominations, and then my life still fell totally apart, even to the point of suicidal attempts. The whole time I was like, why? I did everything right. I went to seminary. I was an elder. I taught Sunday school. And through that time, as dark as it was, it really was a Phoenix story where I wanted to just distance myself from everything I knew about God and what I learned about. But I still had this deep passion, deep connection there that I wanted to pursue. And so that's when I started my years in psychology, got a couple advanced degrees, human development with a specialization in spiritual development, and kind of, went that path. And along that time, I got into meditation, major into, like, for years, all lots of different types of meditation. Went to a couple of the Vipassana 10-day retreats, if you're familiar with that, and then those types of things. And then I had uh, an urge to get to something a little more specific, and angels came to mind. And so that's when I matched up with Nicole Bigley, and we wrote the Looking for Angels book, basically how to connect, all about angels, religion, scientific, psychological, and then she was a psychic intuitive, step by step, how to connect with your spirit team. And then from that book, it was kind of like the stepping stone to the awakening process, just because I opened my mind to other sources of spiritual information other than the sacred texts that I was familiar with. And I got introduced to the intuitive side of things, and that's when my own personal connection with ETs and connection with that a whole raft of information about the purpose of, the path of this earth, where it's going, the awakening, the ascension, whatever you want to call it. And that kind of led me into this book. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Well, I don't, I've known you now for probably a couple of months, and I don't, I'm a little bit almost shocked to hear about the dark phase where you were even suicidal, because I don't see that side of your personality at all. But what was it that sort of led to that? Can you, and I don't mean to pry at all if you're uncomfortable, but
No.
just curious as to what were some of the specifics around that.
Well, it was at a time in my life, I was doing, I was like, if you want to do something, you do it. You're disciplined. You do all the things you need to do. So that's what I was doing. Any of the churches I went to, denominations, I did everything to the T. When I was in the Presbyterian church, somebody came in and did a thing on fasting, the benefits of fasting, did a sermon on fasting. So that was it for me, fasting, once or twice a month, bang, bang, bang. And so, prayer, retreats, all that stuff, learning Greek, I attempted to learn Greek, but enough to like start looking into the New Testament. And then, all the things, the elder, the this and that. And at the same time, my marriage was falling apart. I had 3 kids. And even though, I was still pursuing that, it was just not going well, and we ended up getting divorced. And in the midst of that divorce, huge, financial burdens. And this one night, I had a court appearance. We had a court appearance in a few days, and I was trying to get a hold of my attorney, like, what's going on? What are we going to do? And he wasn't returning my calls because I owed him money because I didn't have any. And it was I'll never forget this. It was a Thursday night. It was rainy out, and I was working at the time for a pharmaceutical company nearby. And I just said, you know what? There's no way out of this. My kids, my soon-to-be ex-wife was dating somebody. He was a good guy. Actually, I liked him a lot. And but at the same time, everybody's angry at everybody. Situations, as you hopefully may not know. But it was late at night. There was a liquor store down around the corner. I went and got 2 bottles of a Shiraz, a Rosemont Shiraz, I'll never forget it. And I downed one, and that's when everything kind of clicked in. I had a life insurance policy, and I figured, I'm more valuable to my kids dead than alive because of the, obviously just the money. But I figured that was it. So I had a motorcycle, Honda CB 1100F, very fast motorcycle. I lived a mile from the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey. And I had been kind of scoping out, I don't know, consciously or unconsciously, there was a perfect bend in the parkway where there was a 25-foot square solid concrete wall. And I said, you know what, if I hit, my bike could easily do 125 in seconds. And I figured I could get up to that, hit that wall, it would all be over. So I got up. I was into the second bottle of wine, by the way, and it was like 2 a.m. I got up, a little shaky. I got my keys to the bike, started heading, got my helmet, went to the door, and I unlocked the door, and I was pulling the door, but it was stuck, and it wasn't usually stuck, but it was stuck. And I pulled and pulled, and like, I got to do this, and then the door exploded into me, knocked me on my feet, on my back in the kitchen. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the morning, sun was out, birds were chirping. I had a massive headache. So I took a handful of Advil and went to work. And that was it, in terms of any psychologist out there, in terms of suicidality, I had a plan and I was in the midst of executing that plan. And so, I'm not proud of that part, but hopefully it just shows where I was. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I was acclimating a bit. And how, if you're into the ocean or in a deep lake or something, and you're swimming around, you're over your head, but then all of a sudden you move and your foot touches bottom. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, I'm on the bottom. And that's what I felt like. I felt this bottom kind of support foundation coming back. And then I had it was a spiritual thing for me. Like it was, everything I learned, like, I don't know if I got it wrong. I don't know if I was taught wrong. I have no idea, but I was back on solid ground. And that's when I really started my in-depth journey of my life. And I'll never, as bad as it was, it brought me to that depth that, I never want to go to again. But that's how that started. More than you asked for, right?
No, that's great. And thank you. This is the kind of thing that we just really want to know the real you, and we can then more fully understand where you're coming from, what you're presenting to us. And in that spirit, I will share with you, yes, I am unfortunately aware. This is my second book, The Hardness of the Heart.
Oh, yeah.
And I went through an extremely painful divorce myself.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I forgot.
And it's kind of autobiographical, but it's me similarly, right? I'm doing everything right. I'm submitting myself to God. It's not just the physical, the material, the emotional, the love life, but also the realization that, we're born to this. We're born to have these relationships.
Mm.
And then, God's in the Bible says he hates divorce. And divorce kind of really destroyed my life early on. My parents' divorce and the kidnapping and all this stuff I went through, domestic kidnapping. So this was something I was never going to do. So it was deeply, deeply disturbing to have to go through that. I'm just saying I can relate to the depth of this and all the things going on. And one more comment is that I often refer to this book by my friend Joseph Atman, A Philosophical War, where he talks about the Garden of Eden story and the emergence of consciousness. And I actually helped him make some edits to that book to re-release it, to introduce the idea that he was right there. He was really talking about this, but he hadn't made the connection that in the emergence of consciousness, when we form an idea about reality, that's an idea in our head, but it's not the reality itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that it's our own concepts that lead us to those dead ends because we're not actually engaging with reality.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, I see what you're
And
saying.
we're engaging with our false construct.
Mm.
And I said, yes, like whatever we think God is, God isn't that.
Right, right.
And the more specific we get, or the more rigid we get, the more that becomes a false idol, which the
Yeah.
first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And the second commandment, and why is there that second commandment? And the Catholic Church condenses them into one. They split the 10th commandment into two.
Mm.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife,
Mm.
and thou shalt not covet his stuff.
Mm. Okay.
that's
Yeah.
that's one commandment. I mean, I think there's more value in splitting the first two statements into
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
than splitting the last one into two.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, the first two statements are, thou shalt have no other God before me. The second one is, thou shalt not make any graven image to bow down
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Well, that idea in our mind is the graven image, our concept of
Yeah.
God. And again, if we're specific or rigid and we start insisting and wanting other people to adopt our version of it,
Mm.
it doesn't work. So that's just one example of me just sort of listening to you and this emerging consciousness, and then also
Mm.
hitting rock bottom and coming back up, feeling that ground. I really love the way you shared that.
Mm.
So that helps me understand that background. And now you wrote this book about angels with a co-author, and then what?
And basically, so I was, and that was only a little over 2 years ago. But looking for angels introduced me, so I went, into school in psychology and doctorate and all that, where you're grounded in research, and academia. And I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, where everything is evidence-based or presented as evidence-based. And so that was my, that was my, that was my, perspective. Like, okay, and that's what kind of tripped me up, I think, in my religious and pursuit of God earlier, was that I was trying to identify and compartmentalize and organize and do it. So the Angels book opened me up, meeting many psychic intuitives and mediums and astrologers and energy healers, and all of a sudden I'm like, how come the rest of the world doesn't know about this stuff? you know Now, certainly, whether intentional or unintentional, organized religion tends to shy away from that. um, I was fascinated by that, and mainly the sources, because, to me, the first step in and even understanding more about our spiritual world, about the planet, about humanity, where we're going, we need other sources of information. And that's when I got introduced to the psychic side of things, and all the channelers, that have been contributing to this database, in a sense, of information about who we are, where we're going, the ascension, and this awakening that's happening, I believe, happening now, in terms of understanding who we are, our divine nature. Not that we didn't know that before. Many religions have that buried deep inside, but many religions teach the separation on a regular basis, that God's up there, we're down here, we're no good, blah, blah, blah. But no, that, to me, that is not reality. And so that's the first part of the awakening. And then the second part is that we're in a universe with many other galactic neighbors, that have been waiting for us to achieve a certain level of unity, before we can kind of join in with them. So when I
Well, that's a great segue into our first commercial break. So I'm going to pause you there,
okay.
and we're going to run this little video, and then when we come back, we'll dive in deeper to that topic. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Scott Guerin and the awkward awakening.
Award-winning and best-selling author Dr. Scott Guerin invites you into a journey unlike any other. A journey into who we truly are and who we are becoming. Humanity is standing at the threshold of profound change. We are awakening to our divine nature, to our galactic heritage, and to our connection with the stars themselves. In this book, Dr. Guerin reveals the remarkable shifts reshaping our understanding of mind, body, spirit, and our place in the universe. This awakening begins by rethinking everything we know about the physical and the non-physical. And with clear, enlightening insights, he guides you step by step through two major transformations: our reconnection to our divine essence and the opening of contact with our ET neighbors. Some of these ideas may feel familiar, like echoes from a faraway home. Every great shift in human history has changed our world, but this one will be bigger than all of them. Awkward Awakening: Finding Your Way Home by Dr. Scott Guerin.
So very engaging. I want to ask you a question that's also sort of boiling around in my head. As you went from attending church and trying to really diligently put into practice everything that was taught, the different sermons you mentioned, fasting and this and that, and also, it sounds like you were also maybe ordained at one point.
An elder, ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church.
So clearly you were very familiar with the teachings in the Bible, in the texts, and then going and interviewing and learning about all these divergent perspectives and approaches. How do you reconcile that? What method do you use? And you've also done intensive research, fact-based, evidence-based research. How do you reconcile the different inputs? How do you determine to lean this way, that way, or the other in terms of sorting through some of the, different interpretations of things?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I had this kind of running around my head for a long time, in the way we've been already talking about it, that God is bigger than anything we can think about, and even to the point when you're talking about definitions and how we can construct things that may not be real. I think the one statement that the minute you try and describe what God or the all that is that then you're wrong. You're right off the bat. So I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's a combination of my mom and dad. Maybe it's because I'm the youngest of four. Maybe because I have a spiritual heritage of many other lives. I was able to say, okay, we have, I'll just say in general, organized religion and what we're told, but we can step out beyond that. The question, did God stop talking 2,000 years ago? And if he did, why? There's Neil Donald Walsh, brought up that question in his books, Conversations with God. And that was really the first impetus for me. His books started thinking, okay, not that religion and everything I learned was wrong, not that there isn't anything extremely valuable and truth is there and facets of God are in that, but you can step out of that and look into what I call modern day sources of spirituality. And I'm not talking about going on TikTok and listening to somebody blabber on for a while. Kind of keeping with my, grounded research background, you start looking and you find people who have been channeling, spiritual beings, angels, and also extraterrestrials, not for 5 years, not for 10 years, but for 30, 40 years. And there's dozens of them writing hundreds of books about that. And that's when I started really
You also have a
delving.
lot of near-death experiences, right? People coming back from the other side as well.
Well, that was one of the chapters is, how do we pierce the veil, of our physical nature, our physical environment? And that's one, near-death experiences and trauma is another, hallucinogenic drugs, and, so different types of things. But my first step was like, okay, where do we get our information from? The Apostle Paul wrote almost half of the Christian New Testament. And where does he say he got his information from? He got it. It was inspired by God. Literally, God breathed. And so to me, and that is what channeling is. And you dig down a little bit, and you find out Einstein and Tesla and even James Cameron and so many people say they've gotten ideas from outside of themselves. And so
Well, and the Apostle Paul also spent the first part of his life
mm,
in scholarship, right?
yes,
So
right,
you have this mix, and that's
yes,
you know,
yes,
but like you, I have become a lot more open in the later stages of my life to all these other inputs,
right.
which in the past, I mean, went back in my fundamentalist days, you know, we believed in a literal devil.
Mm,
I don't believe in a literal devil today. I don't know that I've ever shared that on the show.
mm, mm,
I come from a background where we did,
mm,
and today I believe the devil was a very useful metaphor to
yeah.
describe a lot of things.
Mm,
Um, but like any metaphor, like the parables of Jesus, they weren't intended to be exact, scientific, or specific, right?
right,
But my
right.
point being, once I realized that, um, you know, I was excluding a lot of information from my database
Yes,
because
right.
of fear. Perfect
Yes,
love casts out fear.
right, exactly. And that's the thing. If you say that, if you believe in a God that's all powerful, God, source, whatever, you know, the thought of extraterrestrials or the thought of communicating with past loved ones or whatever, you're saying, your initial reaction was like, no. I know some people, they saw the angel book, they saw psychic in the description, like, that's it, I'm out. It's like, and so you got to say, like, okay, if God is God, then it is going to encompass everything, and you'll be safe. You'll be just as safe in sarcastically, cocoon little world of your religion. You're just as safe there as to say, put a cap on that. I'm going to explore what Lisa Royal Holt says about the Palladian dimensions, or whatever it may be. And then when you allow yourself to have an open mind, and that's why I tell people, you don't have to accept everything, that you learn, not even in your own religion. You don't have to accept everything you learn. Same thing here. To have an open mind, just check it out with an open mind and see what happens. If you still don't like it, you don't have to, delve into it anymore.
Well, one of the very first, things in the Bible is the fact that we have essentially free will, and that's maybe an oversimplification, but it's intentional that we explore.
Right.
And I love going to the Bible to show this, just from the Bible. And so you may have heard me use this example. You have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that's the tree that if you eat of it, you will die. And God said, don't eat of it. And so that's the evil tree, right? But you mentioned Paul. He later says to the Corinthian church that they're acting like babies. They're not even weaned. They still need milk. And they should be teachers, but they're not, because they have to be retaught the very first basic. Put them back on mother's milk, right? Is what he's saying. You're not weaned. And then he says strong meat. You should be eating strong meat by this time. And he says strong meat belongs to those. Strong meat is for those who, by reason of use, have exercised their senses to discern good and evil.
Perfect.
With that statement, he evokes the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and says a mature person exercises their God-given gifts, talents, abilities, their very senses. I mean, the biggest gift we've been given are our senses, in a way, right? Material gift, because we can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can feel, we can explore, we can learn. And he says, by reason of use, we've exercised those senses to discern good and evil, which is the very thing that the serpent told Eve. God doesn't want you to know good and evil because you'll become like him, and he doesn't
Mm.
want that, which was the
Right.
lie.
Right. Yeah. 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 And that
And so,
discernment, that's a key thing. And
right.
that's,
And so one last
yeah,
comment,
go
you
ahead.
mentioned the cocoon, right? Yeah, you can be safe in your cocoon, but you're not exercising your senses.
Yes, right. You're in your crib. You- yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is discernment. A lot of people say like, oh, how do you know, that, if you, ask to make a connection with an ET or an angel or something, how do you know you're not going to invite evil into your heart and, it's going to be bad? And, and I said, well, and sarcastically, I'd say, how do you know when you walk into your church that your church hasn't been, ripping off the parishioners or worse, and
Sadly,
so,
yes, let's not go there,
yes,
but yes,
and
sadly
and
worse.
and so,
You
you
know, bring your
have,
children to church, and sadly worse.
yes, absolutely. So, I kind of use that, obviously not to dig anything, but at the same time, and all the people who are into channeling mainly ETs and contacting with them always say, you know, approach it with good intentions, with positivity, and with discernment. That you will be able to decide, what is not working, bad energy. And that's why I say, just like everything else, you do the same thing. It's just expanding our world. And that's part of the awakening process.
Well, I always think of this statement, which is resist the devil and he will flee
Mm,
from thee.
yes.
So
Yeah.
so yes, if you explore, if you open a door and suddenly you find out it's the wrong door,
Mm,
resist and he will flee. It's beyond slinking away. He will flee.
right. Yes.
And you don't have to, exercise. It doesn't say exercise superhuman power.
Right. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
says resist
That's a lot of
and he will
people.
flee.
A lot of people dismiss their own sovereignty and divine
Right,
nature. And when they
right.
get into crazy situations, they can say, get out, stop this. And if that doesn't work, you can say, you call out, archangels, spirit team, God, Jesus, Allah, whoever. But that is our protection at all times. So the same way with delving, taking a foot out of our comfort zone into new areas, and relying on our internal guidance and intuition and discernment, be able to step into a new world, and which is many, pointers to that is that there's a new world coming.
So why is the awakening awkward?
Well, so that's from my psychological roots. Is that the first thing with new ideas, many model change theory models, start. The first step is denial. Like, no, not going to work.
Mhm.
Wright brothers, no, not going to work. Copernicus, no, you're wrong. So many things are initially, and then Charles Bernard Shaw, my favorite line. All great truths begin as blasphemy. And so as humans, and I think it's just in our DNA, so to speak, we resist change, and it takes a long time to work out. Copernicus's ideas took over 100 years before Galileo really started grabbing a hold of it. And
Well,
then
it's interesting that you referenced Copernicus because I was thinking about him when I reviewed that video of yours before the
mm,
show.
oh,
And I was thinking about a Copernican revolution because at the time, what was the Copernican revolution? It was the fact that the Earth revolves around the sun.
right.
The sun doesn't revolve around the Earth.
Right. And there's
And
scripture
this,
verses to that the church used back then.
right,
Ecclesiastes,
but
there's two or three, like,
yeah, but it was a stretch to use them to support. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So, because the Bible doesn't actually teach that, right?
Right. But yeah.
But the Bible does put us at the center of everything. I mean, you have God, the creator of the universe. There are two creation stories back to back. The pivot between the two creation stories is Genesis chapter 2 verse 4. The first half of the verse says, and thus, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, I don't know the exact formulation, but he basically says, and thus created God the heavens and the earth. Thus God created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, and in the day that he created the earth and the heavens, that's the pivot. The first creation story is the cosmic centric. God created the heavens and the earth. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God waved his hand or whatever and separated the waters from above and below. And he separated the earth from the water. You know, he was hands off, is my point. He said, let there be light, and there was light. Now you get to the second creation story, which is earth-centric, geocentric, human-centric, and you see that same divine being outside of time and space saying, let there be light, and there was light. Now you see that same being bending down in the dust and with his own hands shaping a man, and then giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, breathing life. This is a very different God. And it puts us at the center, the pinnacle of his creation. So yes, I can see how they came to the wrong idea that the earth was the center of everything. And maybe in some ways it is, or maybe it isn't. But my point is, and this whole long explanation here is, the Copernican revolution that you're describing is, we're not the only ones in the universe. And the Bible doesn't say we are.
Right. Yes. Yes. Right. Yeah.
Where does it say in the Bible that God didn't put life on other planets? Why is that belief so entrenched in some?
Yeah. And it's strange. And I think just practically, it's going to creep in even more into our society with the whistleblower laws, protecting military people with that, been seeing a lot. So it's going to start creeping in, and people are going to have to deal with it. And then there is the idea of first contact with, means at some point, in the future, near future, I don't know, but when we are ready as a planet, then that's when our celestial neighbors will say, all right, Earth's ready to go. We've been hands off so far, a little touches here and there, but then it's open for commerce, knowledge trade, knowledge exchange, and then that's part of the whole new Earth idea, the ascension, etc. So, what I say is, like the Twilight Zone, submit it for your consideration, to get, and that's the message, is to just think about it. Think outside of the box just for a minute. You may find you're drawn in if that's your journey. But at least think about these things.
Well, this is another excellent timing point here, because the flow of the show is always your creation story, then your life's work, and then the next question is, where are you growing next? And this one, where are we growing next, right? So when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about your view of what that contact might look like and where we as a species are growing next. Obviously, you've thought a lot about this, and I look forward to hearing from it. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Scott Guerin.
The bond between humans and animals has existed for centuries. They walk beside us, work with us, trust us. Yet, in a world shaped by human hands, their well-being is often an afterthought. Robert Eccles invites us to see animals not as property, but as lives that matter. Through faith, philosophy, and action for our friends, the animals offers a path to a kinder world. Change begins in the choices we make, how we care, how we advocate, how we protect them. Every small act of kindness creates a ripple. The way we treat animals shapes the world we share. For Our Friends the Animals by Robert Eccles. Available now.
Well, I thought that might be a fitting little commercial for today. We had him on the show a few months ago, because you said something earlier on about when we have achieved the right level of unity. You used that word unity.
Yeah.
And of course, unity would also involve the animals. We've done camps. We've taken the kids to this, it's called that Zen farm, where they're taught to how to be with the horses and how to lead the horses through body language. And anyway, I've learned a lot from participating in that with the animals on this planet. But so So the first thing is, what is this idea of unity, and what is the sort of the emergent point? It sounds like you have a thought on us being ready.
Yeah. So the idea of the awakening process is, and stages in a sense, is that we understand our multi-dimensional nature. The short thing is we're eternal beings having a temporary physical lifetime. And then I go through a lot of different models, that, the first to hopefully try and paint the picture that we're in a three-dimensional box right now. We have much more, we are much more than just walking around this three-dimensional box. And you can pierce the veil into the out of this box through, like we were mentioning, near-death experiences. People get glimpses of that in this world. And where with a lot of the people report in near-death experiences, what they go through and feel on the other side, in a sense, is a connection to everyone, and that we are all part of the same thing. And even science, although science has tremendous virtues, science does lag reality in a few times, in a number of ways. But science is coming up with the science of consciousness. Einstein said all things at all points in time are connected. Schrodinger said the number of minds in the universe is one. And even now they're floating these ideas that maybe we're in a like a matrix type of thing. But either way, we have to look that we're all connected. And not that, and I know nowadays you have to, unity is a cringeworthy topic for some people, but I'm not
Yeah,
with the
so it's weaponized, right?
yes,
The people that talk about unity are often the most divisive. They're talking
yes,
about unity in order to divide, in
yes,
order
yes,
to attack their opponents. They're you know,
yeah,
I come from Alaska, and there was this thing that I'd heard up there that there was this guy. Who supposedly he was a really a thief, right? And he would walk away with everything that wasn't tied down. And
mm,
if it was too big to carry, he would just lean up against it and claim it, right?
mm.
And I'm just saying that is like
Yeah, he
that's
felt
what they lean up and claim unity in order to vilify their opponent. It's like,
mm,
really?
yeah, yeah. But the idea of unity is just knowing that energetically, vibrationally, we are all connected. We're all part of the same. We're a hologram of God. God. A hologram is a picture of a tree. You cut up the picture, and every piece of the tree has the information of the entire tree. That's unity with our divine nature, and then subsequently unity with one another. And then it's you can still have diversity and unity, the five fingers in a hand. The football team, you can't have a football team with all tight ends. We need unity in that way, and that is a part of that. We're going to be not only just our own human expansion of knowledge and experience, like so many psychologists have pointed out, that humans tend to evolve, tend to grow, tend to want to expand. We may get it on our own, but there's also things like the Mayan calendar and the yugas and astrological events that may be influencing that. But that's the first step, is the unity, and the term is unity consciousness. And the idea that when ETs as they've been monitoring the planet, as the vibration of the total planet, as it raises slightly over the time it's been growing, when it gets to a certain level, um, and we kind of get the unity concept, that's when they'll say, okay, now you're ready to join us, because we don't want people, the minute, like the It Came From Outer Space movie, where as flying saucer landed in the desert. It's a black and white movie. What do? The military goes and they start just shooting at it. So they want to wait till we mature, more. Um,
So
that
Are you familiar with this story of the conversation between two babies in the womb?
Oh, I'd heard that. I think you started telling me that a few
Yeah, well,
months
I'm
ago.
gonna try to
Yes,
let's see
yes,
if we can stream this real quick because I think this is only like 2 minutes
perfect.
and
Yeah.
it'll really juice the conversation here. Sometimes when I try to do this, it bogs down because of the bandwidth or whatever. But let's see if this works. Also share audio tab. Okay, so here we go. And can you hear me still?
Yes.
Let me know if you can hear the audio when I start playing this.
Stories is in a mother's
Yes.
womb were
Yeah,
two
I can hear.
babies, and one turns to the other and says, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And the other replies, "Why, of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There's no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" "I don't know," said the second, "but there'll be more light than here. Maybe we'll walk with our legs and eat with our mouths. Maybe we'll have other senses we can't understand now." First goes, "That's ridiculous. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths, that's absurd. The umbilical cord is what scientifically supplies nutrition and all that we need, but it's far too short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded." And the second says, "What if it's just different than it is here? Maybe we don't need that physical cord anymore." The first goes, "Okay, if there were life after delivery, then tell me, why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." And the second says, "But certainly we'll meet Mother, and she'll take care of us." The first goes, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? If Mother exists, where is she now?" And the second goes, "She's all around us. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist." And the first says, "I don't see her. It's only logical that she's not here." To which the second replied, "Sometimes, when you're in silence and you really listen, you can perceive her presence. You can hear her loving voice calling down from above." So one of my favorite stories.
Oh, that is such a great story. I love that. A great analogy.
Well, and it works. It works because, to me, it's just true.
Mm, yeah.
We are in a womb and we are gestating. We are gaining the essential elements that we need. You talked about vibrations, whatever it is, it's just different.
Mm,
The existence after that awkward awakening will be different.
yeah. And that's what, part of my message is that what we see around us now, you turn on the news and in tumultuous times, all of the, ancient traditions and even the ETs that have been channeling this information for years say that it's part of the process. It's the storm before the calm, and we have to take a step back, take a deep breath, ground ourselves in who we are, our divine connection, and think more long term. That the new earth, those types of ideas, yeah, they're all mentioned. We all heard about them, growing up. Well, now we could very well be on the edge of moving into that, and it's going to be crazy. Be crazy.
So we've probably all seen some of those movies. I think about the one that had the creature it was recent, right? And it's very slow moving. There's not a lot of language, but there's a creature that they're trying to communicate with and learn the language, right? Extraterrestrial. Do you know what is it called? Awakening? Or I'm trying to remember now.
Those kind of stone type things.
Arrival or
Yeah,
present.
yeah.
The creature was kind of crossed between an elephant and an octopus,
Yes.
is what I remember.
Yeah.
So, but what will it be like in your view? What will that first contact or the emergent integration with a galactic federation or whatever? What will it be like?
Well, right now, I think the part of the awakening is the people call the thinning of the veil, where the dividing line of the wall or mist, whatever you want to call it, between physical and non-physical is thinning, and so people now will start. You'll start having intuitions. You'll start having dreams. You'll start having, claircognizance. You'll be starting to maybe you'll be thinking about a past loved one, and you'll have a dream about them. Those types of things are part of the process in helping us grow outside of our three-dimensional box. And then and then the unity, obviously, but I think the practically, I think what's could happen, and this people have different opinions on it, but basically the ETs, they're advanced beings. They've been around for 100 million years, 500 million years. They're not like us. They know that and they've been in our position, and they've seen Earth-like planets evolve like us societally, in mature. And so they know, they're not here to express their ego and force it on us. So they're here to help us grow. And so they'll let us carve the direction, and then they'll help with that. So, will it be at some point ships? Yes, absolutely. Will it be? There's a group I just learned in Arizona. They're putting money together to build like a conference center between that, where Earth representatives and ET representatives will meet to work it out. Meaning, advanced technology, electricity to everybody, food to everybody, healthcare to everybody, just like they have done 100 million years ago. All right. That's how it's going to work. And as far as that goes, but the Galactic Federation brings up a good point.
I want to pause you there for a moment. I don't want to derail it, so I want you to continue going, but I want to take a step back, because my view on that is it's a twofold thing. When you start saying things like healthcare for everyone, food for everyone, and this actually kind of gets into what you were just saying about how those wiser beings aren't even wanting to meddle prematurely, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets down to our view of God as well,
Mm-hmm.
and also our view of governments and power and authority. That there's this idea that others who are stronger, more powerful, smarter, wiser are responsible, versus each individual, no matter how weak or powerless, how much of a potentially a victim, doesn't have to take personal responsibility. And it's a joint responsibility. It's a meeting, right? You can't the society, governments can't fix the problem if the individual isn't fixing the individual.
Yes, and that is,
and then you get this blame game about who's responsible and who's a victim, and you get intersectionality, and you get power structures. You follow me? So when we think of an alien intelligence and an alien technology coming and helping us, it's not so much the ability to grow the food or provide the food. To quote the Bible, there's a proverb that says the I think it's the sluggard, or the lazy person is so lazy that they have the spoon in the bowl, but they don't bring it to their mouth.
Right. Yeah.
You have, and I know that's a horrible thing to say today. You're not like, and I'm only saying that because I'm a white male and I'm evil and I'm privileged and I'm this and that. To dare to say that people need to learn to take care of themselves. It's a mutual responsibility between society and the individual. And anyway, I didn't mean to totally derail the conversation. I wanted to take on that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that we have to be careful, not that we don't project everything that we know about government and how people work and all that onto some advanced being. but at the same, so maybe a counterpoint to that would be that they, knowing that they would not do that, that no, we're not going to force anyone. We're not going to, so if we
Well,
want to,
it was less about that actually, and more about us maturing to the point where we could have interaction
I see.
would involve perhaps realizing that's not how we get unity. That's not how we fix all our problems,
Mhm.
is to have centralized government control and authority,
Mhm.
making sure that everything is fair
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
and equitable when, equality of outcomes
Mhm.
is not the same as equality of opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's a difficult, thorny thing. I mean, I get the complexity. I'm not trying to oversimplify it,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, it's an excellent point, and that's actually where I might be headed, is to really delving into that. How to apply, in a sense, alien sociological concepts, to this planet, when that does happen. Because, like, you're right, it's just not another, conquering, smarter people like telling us here, this is what you want to do. Um,
We're getting the
so
iPhone 23 instead of the iPhone 16, and all of our problems will be solved.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's it. We have to be very careful projecting, what we think we know onto something that we don't know. But yeah, it's all for the betterment of the planet and the people. However, what that looks like, I don't know, because there's still bad actors. There's still bad actor ETs out there, and there's probably still be bad actor humans, no matter what happens. Um, that has to be governed, unfortunately, and dealt with. So, what that all looks like, I don't know, but the idea of unity, if once people grasp that and are able to embrace that as a virtue, is one giant step ahead of where we are now.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Religiously, I'm a Baha'i. I don't make a big deal about that, but unity is one of the highest goals. The
Yeah.
oneness of God, the oneness of humanity, the oneness of all races, just oneness, right?
Mm.
We are all one,
In
and
a, in a way, I mean, once you get that, like, everything else will take care of itself,
exactly,
in a very, very simplistic way. Um, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so, and that's why I get why I stopped on that point about individual responsibility versus
Mm.
collective responsibility.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
really need both. You can't have one without the other.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
if we look back throughout history, the human project and even the ideals and the aspirations of this nation, America, are to e pluribus unum, right? Out of many, one,
Mm.
and the one nation under God. And it's actually 50 states. A state in the 17 and 1800s was a nation. The
Mm.
nations were called states.
Mm.
So really, the United States of America could equally be called the United Nations of America,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Where we have a federal government and we have state government, and they have some autonomy. You've heard the sovereign state of Texas, right?
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
the states do retain a degree of sovereignty,
Mm.
and so do and should the individuals, right?
Mm.
But in a balanced submission to a higher purpose and a higher ideal, that's where
Mm.
the unity comes from.
Mm. That's fascinating, and thank you for bringing that in, and helping me start digging into that. Because you figure, if somebody, civilization's been around for millions of years, they probably have some thoughts about that.
Well, that's it. I mean, that is the challenge of the world. We've not out the United Nations at a global scale. And
Yeah, yeah.
you've had authoritarian, you had the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Now, I shared my second book. I'll go ahead and share my third book.
Mm,
This is the conclusion of that trilogy, The Rod of Iron.
mm,
And what is this? Well, this is obviously the Apollo going to the moon,
mm,
and and you got the American flag here. But what was happening at the time was a space race
mm,
between
mm,
what? Between the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and the United States of America.
mm,
Two differing views of
mm,
how to organize the collective interests
mm,
of a diverse set of nations and peoples,
mm. Yeah, yeah.
and how to organize them and to create the unity that we would be needed to make this transcendent advance.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I I refer to the Tower of Babel a lot here because he was trying to build a tower to heaven, and
Mm,
the moon is in heaven in biblical terms. God set the greater, it's right behind me, a constant reminder, the
mm,
moon and the sun, the greater and lesser lights were put in heaven to rule the day and the night. And so the tower to heaven, if you got to the moon, you would get to heaven because it's
mm,
literally in heaven in biblical terms. So
mm,
you have these two systems of governance organizing vast populations and diverse nations competing to get to heaven.
mm. Yeah,
And
wow. Yeah.
one model was more successful in the end. For a while, the Soviets were ahead, but the American model was more cooperative and more free
Mm, mhm.
than the more coercive model of the Soviet Union,
Right. Yeah,
which was
yeah.
more authoritarian. And they had a lot of centralized planning, more so than the United States did, but ultimately it collapsed. And I was in Leningrad at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union when
Wow.
Gorbachev was abducted. I was literally there coming in from Finland while the tanks were coming from Moscow. And I didn't know how
Wow.
bad it was. I was,
Oh,
I was, there was a program with Radio TV Leningrad where we were trying to bring in religious programming into the Soviet Union under Gorbachev. And I was told to stand down and not go. And I said, "Are you pulling these other people out that were on that project?" And they said, "No, they're going to stay there." One said, "Well, I'm going in." I didn't know how bad it was that tanks were coming. These are
mm,
these sort of um, geopolitical convulsive events
mm,
that
mm,
are part of the advance of our civilization. The context here is, what is it going to take to get us ready?
mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people, it's still out there. A cataclysm, might happen. Could be ourselves, could be solar flares, could be a comet. And that might be the only thing that will get us out of this, which I hope not. I really hope not. But sometimes I wonder, about that. So
Well,
hopefully,
all the work of, the psychological work, the spiritual work that you're doing, the conversations you're having, the weaving of threads together, I believe it all plays a part. So thank you for all that work.
yeah,
Awkward Awakening is the name of the book that currently is like that rocket ship near the top of the the titles.
it's
So hopefully the audience will check it out here. The well, no, so we'll look quickly at a couple of comments here. I know we're out of time, but if you still have a couple of minutes, we'll
sure.
see. We can deal with it. Here's one from Holy Mustard. I feel like intuition has gone through the roof as of late. Are you seeing that in your conversations? I mean, are you seeing a sort of a spike, a hockey stick kind of
Yeah,
approach to?
very much so. Very much. And the practitioners that are in the energy world, the energy healers, the intuitives, they're saying it's like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. And people who have not had any kind of inkling to that are starting to see more of that in their lives. So, yeah, Holy Mustard. I think you're right on. You're probably very connected and in tune, and are getting bombarded right now.
Well, and here's a kind of a question I say not out of left field, but out of right field. Somebody who's maybe wrestling a little bit with this whole idea of religion and aliens. Have you heard stories of abductees stopping the process by calling out the name of Jesus?
No, not abductees. Certainly.
And more broadly, what do you feel? Well, go ahead and answer that, and I'll tackle our question.
In certainly spirit, demonic situations, I've heard that. People have said that they say in the name of Jesus or Mother Mary or whatever it may be, and it would stop. But that's what I tell people, that if you're in a crazy situation with something that might be alien-like, you can still ask Jesus. Jesus eternal, angels eternal, they're still around to help. So it's not out of their territory to be there and protect us.
They're not powerless to deal with aliens.
Right, absolutely. Aliens are just us, older.
So you mentioned, since they bring up abductions, you mentioned bad actors. Are these abductions helpful, loving, positive, or are they negative? What are they?
Well, there's a lot of different perspectives on what they are. Most of them are just being, kind of like, we hear about probes and, surgery types of things. It could be just an advanced race having issues with their genetic makeup and looking for, humans to maybe repair some DNA that they have gone bad for them. They may just want to monitor our progress. And so it's absolutely crazy. I haven't done it, but somebody abducted, taken to a ship, whatever, somebody taken, going to a ship and analyzed and brought back. Yeah, it's a negative. It could be a negative experience, abducted, crazy. But was it really, was it bad? Did they torture them forever? That type of thing. So abduction, I would say, I always say, well, so-called abductions, but at the same time, there are small groups. Everyone agrees that there are bad actors, and everyone agrees that they're a very small part of the total ET population. So there might be some that would come for whatever, I don't even know why they want to come and torture us.
Well, and statistically, if we accept the logic that hands off is the way to be, then those interactions would be the negative ones, because that would be, in a sense, the ones that are going rogue or whatever.
Yeah.
Not, what was the prime directive? Was that in Star Trek or whatever?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I talk about that. Why haven't they? I have a whole chapter on that. Why haven't they been contacting us, or why haven't they contacted us? And lots of different theories about that. But yeah, I would not shy away. It's like the 311 rule in automotive sales, right? If you go buy a car, you have a bad experience, you're going to tell 11 people. If you have a good experience, you tell 3 people. And so, and they're very dramatic. I mean, you're not gonna make you're not gonna have a viral TikTok saying that you had a really nice conversation, with the Arcturian. You're not gonna have that.
Interesting. Well, Scott, we're out of time. It's been really, truly enjoyable and educational. What last comments would you like to leave the audience today with?
I guess, my mission is, divinely inspired, to help people remember that they are source, that we are source, we are love, we are part of God. And there's nothing outside of that can harm us. We're indestructible. And to be a part of the ascension of our human existence, to be more loving, kind, and look for that oneness and unity wherever we can.
Well, Scott, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure, and we'll be continuing to follow your journey and keep us posted on what you're learning.
All right. Thanks, Wade. And thanks to all the listeners. Had a great time.
Awesome. And I have one more thing to do, which is to share the sneak peek for next week's show. So everyone stay tuned for that to see who's coming up next week. And in the meantime, don't forget, you are created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. We'll see you all next week. Welcome to this sneak peek for the Created in the Image of God show with Shane Claiborne, who has founded Raw Tools, Red Letter Christians. Welcome to the studio, Shane.
Hey, good to see you. Yeah, man.
Well, God knows the end from the beginning, and since we already recorded the show and have it in the can, you are able to prophesy about what the guests might be able to experience when they come? What are they going to learn when they come to watch you on the Created in the Image of God show?
Oh man, we're going to talk about Jesus and Dolly Parton and Mother Teresa and why Christians mess things up so often, and talking about love and justice and turning guns into garden tools. So don't miss it, y'all. Join us.
And I got to say, like I said on the show, your intellectual coherence and spiritual commitment to this, the way you weave these things together. So tell me just give me one example of what Raw Tools is, maybe the name, and then, what are you actually doing with Raw Tools?
Yeah, we get our name Raw Tools from flipping the word war around backwards. And we've been inspired by this vision in the Bible of beating swords into plows and spears into pruning hooks. So for the past 15 years or so, we've been taking guns that are voluntarily surrendered, and we destroy them and repurpose them into garden tools, and we say life-giving things. So we're making all kinds of stuff out of chopped up guns. But we're also, every time we do it, we're declaring all things can be made new. And what's true of metal is also true of our social policies. It's true of human hearts. God's transforming all things.
Thank you. It's just amazing. Everyone, you're not going to want to miss this coming Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central, Created in the Image of God with Shane Claiborne, Raw Tools, and Red Letter Christians. See you then.